On this episode of the Rocky Mountain Mouse, we'll talk about what's going on in the Disney parks, and then we'll open up the chatterbox and I'll have a special guest here with us. We'll be playing a game called Is It Really That Cool? Lots to talk about today, so let's move. From the heart of the beautiful Wasatch Mountains, welcome to the second episode of the Rocky Mountain Mouse. My name is Ray, and I'm glad that you've joined me on my journey of all things Disney parks. Before we get talking about the Disney things, I did want to give a shout out to the Davis High School Marching Band from Kaysville, Utah, for their recent invitation to the Macy's Parade in 2017. The reason why that's special to me is because I taught there as an instructor for 12 years. I remember how exciting it was to be a part of the Rose Parade, so going to Macy's is yet another feather in their cap, so congratulations to you guys. But moving on to the Disney things, like I talked about in our last episode, we had our first family planning party for our Disney World trip coming up in the fall this year, and we did a contest with our videos or poetry or whatever it is we wanted to do. And one of the things that came from that was this awesome ear hat. My sister designed some Mickey ear hats for everyone, and they all have our personality on them. So I don't know if you can see this. I'll get a close-up picture as well. But I'm a drummer, and so it's got 2 drumsticks and 2 drums. So I'm really excited to get down to Disney World and wear my Disney drum ear hat. So my first episode of this YouTube series was my entry, and although I didn't win, my sister who spent all the time on these hats did, but I did get this fantastic participation trophy, so yay for me. Really exciting stuff. Anyway, it was a really fun party. Some of the stuff that we did there we'll talk about in future episodes for ideas that you guys might want, but we always have a good time as a family as we do those things. So let's move on and talk about what's happening in the Disney parks. What's happening in the Disney parks in Disneyland, California? NBC Los Angeles reports, hang on to your helmets, your lightsabers, and your droids. Ground has officially broken at Disneyland Resort in advance of the anticipated Around the Universe Star Wars lands. Yay! A 360-degree image released by the Anaheim theme park shows what appears to be a fresh construction site with a dirt road, some hard-hatted employees, and the expected heavy machinery. Also in here, you see the appearance, if you go look at this, you'll see the appearance of BB-8, an AT-AT, and a TIE Fighter. So I'm going to leave links to this article and to the Disney Parks blog where this image can be found. Go take a look at it and nerd out with me over the opening or the groundbreaking of Star Wars Land. Closures for Disneyland this week, the 17th to the 23rd of April, include those attractions over by this construction, which are Disneyland Railroad, Mark Twain Riverboat, Tom Sawyer Island, Fantasmic, and the Explorer Canoes. Also closed this week at Disneyland are Autopia and the Jungle Cruise. So let's flip over to the other side of the country in Lake Buena Vista, Florida. The Motley Fool is reporting that the after-hours ticketed event didn't go as expected for Disney, and they're calling it a flop. Attractions Magazine reported that there were approximately 1,000 people in attendance for the first date. If those people paid $149, that would be $149,000 in revenue, which may not even cover the costs of having the park open for those 3 hours and the food and whatnot. I will read what it said in the Motley Fool. It said, More troublesome than the low turnout is that many people who were there supposedly didn't pay to attend. Attractions Magazine is reporting that free tickets were given out to travel agents, ticket sellers, and the Disney Vacation Club members. In other words, don't go adding $149,000 to Disney's theme parks division for its fiscal third quarter. So there's only 6 dates remaining on this experiment in order for it to remedy itself. But it may just not catch on, which to me is not that troubling because I feel like it was a complete money grab on Disney's part. And I'm hoping that these things... I hope that all of us stand strong. We don't let them continue to nickel and dime us wherever they possibly can. Closures at Walt Disney World this week include over in Epcot, Soarin', Circle of Life, which isn't a terrible thing, and the Stave Church is going to close down for refurb on April 18th. Also, the Monorail this week is on modified schedules. And the Walt Disney World Railroad is down for refurb. So that's what's happening in the Disney parks. All right, welcome to this segment of the Chatterbox. Today I have a special guest with us here today. My sister Karen has joined us. And we're going to play a game today called Is It Really That Cool?
Yes.
So we're going to talk about things that are down at Disney World. We may do a little comparison of what's in Disneyland, but it's all Disney World stuff. And we're going to talk about whether we think it's cool or not. Karen, what is your nerd factor as far as Disney World is concerned?
I would say my nerd factor is probably around in between a 3 and a 5, so I guess between that would be 4. But just to put this in perspective, I lived about 60 miles away from Orlando. And I never went to Disney World until my family went, which I enjoyed it every time I went, though. And it was, so that's my perspective. I'm a nerd. I won't deny that, but not completely nerdy about Disney World.
All right. And
some people.
It's fair to say that I've got a 10, right?
Yep, you're about a 10.
Yeah, I think I'm at a 10 on the nerd factor for Disney and Disney World. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about things. We're going to vote. So we have the person that is at the lower end of the spectrum and the person that's at the top end of the spectrum. And we're going to see where we line up. So we've got our voting paddles. We're going to decide if what we're talking about is lame or if it's super cool. So if we disagree, then it's going to go into a middle category called cool. Now, on my Facebook page and on the website, which I'll put the links below, I've also got this in a poll form, so you can follow along with us or you can take it after, and then we'll see where we all land if we are in the same place together. So why don't we go ahead and get started?
I'm ready.
All right. Super cool! We agree. It's full super cool. Why do you think it's super cool?
Well, I'm not quite sure. I think it's more towards the cooler side than it is the lamer side, which is why I picked up the super cool. It's pretty cool. They do like a forced perspective on some of the things they build in Disney World, and when you come up on that castle, it is amazing. It really looks like it's larger than life.
Yes.
And they've cleared, it's a big clearing, lots of grounds around it. And so it's just magnificent. And at night when it lights up or they do that fireworks show, it's really impressive. The reason why I didn't want to say it was all the way super cool is because the inside isn't as cool as the outside. I went in there once and I'm not quite sure I'd want to go, stand in line to go in there again, but I would definitely look forward to seeing the outside of Cinderella.
Yeah, and I'll have to give that up. Cinderella Castle is amazing, and it's so large and so breathtaking when you turn that corner. At Disneyland, they do have a walkthrough show that's a lot. You feel more like you're walking through the castle, whereas at Disney World, you just go to a restaurant that, you are in line and you're dealing with a bunch of other people.
And
so.
Like the staircase up, let me just warn you, the staircase up to the place is like single file. But people are coming up and down. So you've got to prepare yourself to go sideways up the staircase on there. You're going up to the restaurant because people are going to be coming down and you're going to be going up, and it's just only meant for like one person.
I just do the Princess Bride thing, like everybody move, and just get them out of my way. That's what I do. Super cool. She thinks it's lame. Go ahead. Tell us why you think it's lame.
Well, when you guys would talk about the people mover, I initially thought that was the monorail because you think that you're going to move people from point A to point B, which really there's no net gain in any movement of ground. So you get on the people mover like any other ride. Then you should call them all people movers then. But it's nice. I mean, it's not, I don't say, this is like last time, it's not completely lame because it really gives a nice perspective of future world. I think it would have been cooler if the people mover actually went to another park like Fantasyland and kept the future theme. And then it'd be used a lot more so people had to walk. But then again, that's probably why they did it, because they want you to walk through the things.
What would you think if they put a people mover in over at Epcot? At the World Showcase.
That actually would be cool. If the people mover went all around those areas, amazing. That would be nice. That would be a really nice ride because it gives you the grounds are so big, and Florida is so flat that when you're standing in one part of the park, you can't appreciate all the parts of the park and how it's laid out. So a people mover would give you that perspective very quickly. And
Yeah.
it's different from the monorail. The monorail doesn't really. It kind of gives you a little bit of that, but not. It gives you an idea of the space between the parks, but not the parks themselves.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I really like the People Mover, probably for more nostalgic reasons. It reminds me of the old People Mover from California. If you remember that one and haven't done the one in Florida, it has a much nicer clip, the one in California. They closed down because people kept getting off of it while it was moving and like changing cars. And yeah, when they used to go through a little tunnel inside of the old Carousel Progress Theater in the back end, and it was like a speed tunnel, and so they had all these projections on the ceiling to make you feel like you're going faster, but you know, high school kids were always trying to horse around in there. And
how funny.
Yeah, so heck yeah, super cool. This is my favorite ride in the park, primarily because it's as a kid, I was so wanting to get inside the big golf ball, and I never had the opportunity to do that. And I just wondered what was in there. And when I finally got down there in 2009, that's the first park I went to. And when I saw that golf ball, that 10-year-old kid in me just exploded all over the place. And I think that's what really made me fall in love with Disney World, was just coming up to the Spaceship Earth or the big golf ball, and then the anticipation is getting in and getting on the ride cart, and then being overwhelmed by the music and the story. So what do you think about Spaceship Earth?
Well, Spaceship Earth always reminds me, when I see it, of you. So it reminds me of my little brother, and so I would love it for that reason. But I've talked before about how I thought Walt Disney was optimistic about human nature and people's ability to make the right decisions in the end. And you get that sense a lot going through that ride. Plus a perspective, if you're somebody like me that gets a more peaceful feeling when you look at the ocean or when you look at space, because you think that you feel like you're a smaller part of a larger whole, you know, then this ride will give you that sort of feeling. Plus very optimistic about what people have in the future. And that was also, at the time that was created, and the time Walt Disney probably developed professionally, was also, they were very optimistic about technology and what the future would be like. They were very future oriented, so it also has that nice.
Yeah, and it's I mean, you get into the ride cart and you're sitting there with the technology and a touch screen right in front of you. And the first time I rode it, there's a touch screen, and you sit down in it, and then you choose which language you speak, and then that's what will be piped in behind you, and the speakers are in your ears. And so I got in, and apparently my belly is from Japan, because it went ahead and chose for me as I was getting in the ride. And so the first time I ever rode that, I had to hear the whole thing in Japanese. So that was a pretty exciting time for me. I had to get off and get right back on, so I understood what was being said, but it was kind of interesting to have it done in Japanese the whole way.
Yeah, the audio was nice, but don't let the visuals, and I don't think actually they're playing during the ride.
They're not.
But don't let that upstage the actual ride because it's really remarkable.
Yeah. Super cool. So is this a super cool for you or just a kind of cool?
No, this is super cool, but I like to travel and I like to see different places and different cultures. And the best parts of those pavilions that I went to, or one of the best parts, were those movies in the round because you're surrounded by, it's like almost like a Soarin', but you're not moving like that.
It's kind of like the precursor to Soarin'.
Yes, it is. And you get to look at some of the most beautiful parts of each of those countries while they talk to you about them. And I remember after leaving at least China and Canada, I wanted to go there. France is not so much in the round. France is like a traditional theater, but it's still beautiful.
Super cool. Yeah, I really like Soarin'. They just call it Soarin' in Florida, but it is still the Soarin' over California film. This was cutting edge technology for theme park rides when they released it, so I think that's really cool. What is it that you like about Soarin'?
It's just a well done ride. It's like if you like hang gliding or want to get that sensation, you really get that sensation in Soarin', and they do a lot to make it an experience. Like you smell oranges when you're flying over the orange. Well, I don't want to give it away, but that's what happens. I knew that's what happened before I went in there, but it didn't take away anything from the ride. I just think it's a great ride. Everybody should go on it. Take your shoes off because they tell you to do that, and because your feet are dangling. So I was like, oh, I won't have a problem if my shoes won't fall off, and I was like, they're gonna fall off.
You're cringing your toes.
Halfway through, I started worrying more about whether my shoes going to hit someone below me, but just it's well worth the wait. If you wait, I never saw a big wait at Soarin'. It's usually
the queue moves pretty quickly, so It's a longer queue because you go through this almost tunnel type of thing to get out to the theater. But yeah, it's a quick movement queue, so
yeah,
just get your fast passes for it. Space.
Mission Space.
Yeah, I thought it was Mission to Mars, but it's actually called Mission Space.
I think Mission to Mars is a movie, isn't it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I thought I better be a little more accurate since people that are watching this probably know better than I do.
That's true. You
Mission Space, but now you're going to find out why I didn't know the name. 1, 2, 3. Lame. I'm just going to say you can talk about it because you wrote it. I didn't write it, and so some people may feel like I don't have a right to vote on it, but I just didn't feel like I wanted to be hurled around in circles like I was sitting in a clothes dryer, and I just don't know why anybody would think that's amusing. So that being said, why don't you tell people what it was really like?
Well, I love fast rides. I love roller coasters, and in that trip, I think we had just got done with the Rock and Roll roller coaster. And a few other coasters that I just love. So I was ready to keep going on fast rides, and Mission to Mars was supposed to be Mission to Space was supposed to be a fast ride. So you get in the line, and the first clue to me should have been that there was nobody in the line. And then the second clue was that 3 times along the way, including just before you walk into the big centrifuge room, there were signs saying, if you have anxiety or a heart condition, please exit now. They gave you 3 opportunities to do that. I've never seen that on a ride before.
Defibrillators along the wall.
Exactly. At the time, though, it was like, yes, this is like the ride of my dreams. This is like warning people all over the place. So we get in there, and you get into this very, very small space. And it feels small to begin with, and then you put the things that come down on you to hold you in, and then it begins to feel smaller. But I think as they shut the door, everything moves towards you. So really, you're like, things are close on your face, and which is I was like, okay, I can handle this, because you're going to watch a little movie screen. And then they start the ride, which is basically a centrifuge, so you can get some zero G's going. But let me just tell you, if you're a buxom lady, or if you happen to be large and lovely, all of this mass kind of goes up into your chest and over your neck, and pretty soon you're like, I'm having a panic attack, because not only am I in a centrifuge, I can't breathe. It's all going, and then you're watching this film where your ship is crashing. And the whole experience is like, get me out of this I can't handle this. So I remember I rode with Shyla and Morrow, and people, when they get off the ride, a lot of them are like, if it was a fun ride, they'd be like, yeah, everybody gets off the ride and kind of shakes himself off, and we're kind of walking down in silence. And I said, does anybody want to do that again? And it was like, no. It was more uncomfortable than fun, but it definitely gave you a sense of what I think astronauts go through. So that's fair enough. I'm glad I did it, but I'm not sure.
And you also know it's a bad sign when the gift shop at the end of the ride, nobody stops to buy anything. They just want out.
Yep. That's funny. How did you know that?
Because I didn't ride it, but I went into the gift shop. I usually go to the end if I'm not going to ride a ride and just look at the gift shop while people are riding. And that one was empty. And then the people were just coming through and was like, we're done.
Like,
no, thank you.
It feels like liberation. It's like you want to go outside. Like, I'm so free of that ride.
I don't need any souvenir to commemorate that experience. So. I'm not going to talk about why I think this is so cool, because I could go on for 3 hours. So why don't you go ahead and tell us?
Okay, well, I'm pretty Star Wars nerdy, so this one may not be... Well, there's definitely bias in
both of us.
But the nice part about Star Tours is there's usually a queue for it, but as you're in the queue, it really kind of gets you in... it's entertaining to be in the queue, because they have conversations going on between different characters. It feels very Star Wars-y. That's the closest thing to being like on a Death Star set I think I'll ever get. But it was really fun to stand in line, and then you get into the box, and this technology is pretty old, where it kind of moves around, where it's showing you a video, but it's improved a lot. And even if it wasn't Star Wars, I'd probably want to go again, because that was a neat ride. I enjoyed it. So. Yeah.
For you.
I know. People are going to not like me. I can feel it.
Well, I'll start because I think it's really, really cool. Animal Kingdom Park is a certified zoo. And so you go there, and really there's the entertainment part of it, is secondary to the education of a zoo. And so what I really liked about this is it gives you an opportunity to actually get on safari vehicles, and they drive you through the habitat that they've recreated for them. And so you're driving, and you're actually, in certain portions, you're actually with the animals. So, and, there was, the last time I went down, we actually had to stop the truck as we waited for a herd or a gaggle, I don't know what they're called, of giraffe to, they were walking next to us, and then they decided to walk in front of us and then walked along the road. So we actually had to sit for a little bit. But that was pretty amazing to have those animals so close to us.
I will say that the giraffes were cool. And I think the whole concept is really, really cool. And it is a zoo. And much like a zoo, when you go there, I remember going there when I was young, getting all excited to see all the animals, and you walk into like the lion's cage, and this is where the lion hangs out, but there's no lion. That's these safaris. It's like, these are where the lions hang out. And we drive past, oh, you see that lump up there on the rock? That's the backside of the lion asleep. So I think it would have been cooler if they're active, but I understand they're turning it on at night, probably for that reason.
Yep.
So that it's not just giraffes.
Yep.
That it's all the animals are more active, and that will be cool. That will push it into super cool.
In our several trips down there, we found that the most effective time to go is first thing when the park opens, and it's cooler and the animals are out, but you're right, they tend to hide. So What's wrong with going in and saying, hey, here's Abraham Lincoln's bed?
Well, because the lion is the Abraham Lincoln. We all know is not there.
Okay.
Now, if he was there and he was not to be seen, I'd be mad that I paid that money. But the lions are there. They're just not coming out.
Okay, I'll give it to you. Cool. The difference between the monorail in California and the one in Florida is that the one in Florida is actually a mass transit system, whereas the one in California is more of a ride and attraction to kind of say, hey, this is what this technology could do for us. In Disney World, this is how you get around to several of the parks. And this is, you actually have to ride this to get over to Magic Kingdom from the parking lot. So it's just, to me, it's just part of that Disney World trip. You just get locked into that. So what do you think about the monorail?
Well, the first cool thing is it was built in the early 70s. Was it early 70s? Or, So it's got that kind of nostalgic feel to it. It's stylized that way, and that's really cool. The other thing is that you like we were talking about the people mover. You do get a sense of the area of Disney World while you're riding on it. The stops that it makes are extremely convenient. It's quiet, it's on time, and it really is just like a nice public transit. There's plenty of room when you sit down, and it's just a nice way to get around the park.
Yeah, isn't it amazing that you can sit in the Contemporary Hotel because the monorail goes through the hotel and stops in the hotel? Thing. But isn't it amazing that you can be in there and you actually have to think about it to look up when the monorail arrives because you really can't hear it coming in and out like you'd expect.
Yeah.
Just kind of whizzes in and drops people off and off it goes. So
yeah. It was, I think the monorail's great for a park like this. It just has we've taken it a lot.
Yeah. Now, this one is super cool to me, but leaning towards the cool.
Yeah.
Because we've kind of had a hit or miss experience there. Sometimes the food's good, sometimes it's bad. And the other thing I don't really care for is when you're sitting there waiting, it feels like you're in a cattle call to get into the restaurant, which is unlike most of the other restaurants down there. But it's primarily because it's so popular. Yeah. Why is Ohana so popular?
Because, it's, I would say that place to eat is a lot like a luau. More like that luau feel than some of the luau's you actually go to in the same resort.
Yeah.
And it's a great place to sit with your family and be able to talk with them and mingle with them, and they keep bringing food over and they're happy to bring it over, and it just feels like a feast. And the sweetbread is really good. The meat is really good.
The noodles are really good.
The noodles are really good, and so I've liked it every time we've gone to the Ohana. But we also had our uncle did the entertainment at the Polynesian years ago and for years, and so they provide great entertainment there, and we just really enjoy it. It has a lot of nostalgia for us, and if you get the right seat there, you can get a great view of the fireworks at night. Yeah,
it really is a fantastic place, and even though I have had my issues, I still think it's really great.
Yeah, of course.
Super cool. Why is it super cool for you?
Because it's the only park, so they have a resort, right? So they have resorts that have different themes, and they usually have to do a lot of work to build up your sense of being in the area where the park or the resort was themed after. But in Port Orleans, they didn't have to do that. They just played up the natural beauty that's already in Florida and where Disney World sits. And so because of that, it ends up being a very peaceful place.
Yeah, absolutely.
A beautiful green, the river coming down. It just really is a great place to walk around. And you feel like you can get Disneyfied there if you go look for it, but you can also get a refuge from Disneyfication if you need that at the end of the day.
Yeah, it definitely has an insulated feel, and you wouldn't know that you're just a stone's throw from the Epcot park,
right?
Because you are that removed, and everyone's calm, everyone's nice, and even though everyone's been at the parks all day long, it just calms you down. There's a river, and you can get on a boat and go over to downtown Disney or Disney Springs. And it's just an amazing place. And so it also has a very sentimental value for me because it's the place that our mother just always dreams of. She's got a picture of it up on her wall. And so it's also got sentimental value.
So it is cool.
Yeah.
And it's in the moderate zone. And I think it's the best resort in that price range.
Yeah, if you feel like you can't afford a deluxe, but you want that almost deluxe feel, Port Orleans is the place.
Yep.
Port Orleans is definitely the place. All right, we're going to go off property for just 1 minute and discuss a place that my family likes to go eat, with the exception of one person. And that's why we're talking about it. I want her voice to be heard.
That's right.
And it is Steak and Shake. Super cool. Now let me explain for a second that I give this a super cool in Florida, Denver, Reno, wherever else I've been to a Steak and Shake, Gainesville. I don't give it for the one here in Utah because it's not as good. But
it's not, well,
it's fantastic everywhere else.
Yeah, I think what happens is when my family would come to Florida, I think the change in altitude, the oxygen went to their head, and all of a sudden, mediocre food became like this amazing thing. But I actually think that it was the price of the food that made it more amazing, because I could not, in my office when I was working in Gainesville, I looked across the street to a Shake and Shake, and that place was not hopping at all. Because you know what? It wasn't that good. So here's my thing. What amazes me is that we've paid for meal plans and intentionally gone off property.
That's right.
Steak and Shake.
That's right.
Don't do it. I'm telling you, don't do it.
Oh, I'm telling you, do it.
No.
It's worth it.
If you have a Steak and Shake around, you know that you probably won't do it. But if you haven't and you're tempted now, I would just stay on property.
Super cool. All right, you go first.
Well, it is, again, it's a lot older ride. It has animatronics, which at the time that came out, I'm sure that was amazing. It made the ride just like totally great to watch. It seems a little dated now, but the themes and the message and the music that is talked about on that ride gives you a really good perspective of how quickly technology can change, especially now. That was poignant at the end, because at the end you have what it's supposed to be like today. And I know they've updated it every year. I've tried to add something to that, and it's still dated.
Yep.
When you see it. So, but you know what? It's cool. It's nostalgic. It's kind of out of the way, so it's not really in a prominent place in Future World either.
Yeah, and for me, it has the big nostalgic factor. So if you're a Disney nerd, this ride's going to mean something to you, primarily because it's the only ride in Florida that Walt Disney actually had direct input on.
Right.
Everything else happened after he passed away. So there's that portion of it. It's also historic because it started in the World's Fair in the 1960s, moved to Disneyland in California, and then ended up over in Disney World in Florida. So if they do decide to ever get rid of it, I hope they put it in some sort of museum. Yeah. Because it just speaks back again to Walt Disney's vision and his hope for humanity. And I have the same problem. They keep trying to update that last segment, and so you're jumping from the 50s to the 90s instead of a decade. And so I would rather see them go back and restore the original 1960s version of that last scene, and then add another showroom that you can go into and talk you through the remainder of the progress of technology. And, you know, Disney is in partnership with Apple, so have them come in and use that as a show place and a showroom to promote future technologies. And I think you'd get a lot more people there.
Well, and you're right. In that park, the remaining rides are based on movies and based on shooting or action or some other very fun thing like that. But again, it's Walt's optimism on the future and technology and humans' ability to do good things with technology and science that was, you walk away with that. In fact, I kind of feel like we should close out this with singing "It's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow."
Yeah.
He's not going to join me.
Yep.
Going to join me.
X Factor right here. Lame. So that's all we're going to have time for today in this episode. Appreciate you coming and being a part of it today. Remember, I've got a website now. It's rmmouse.com. You can also like my Facebook page, Rocky Mountain Mouse, and my Twitter handle at rmmouse1. So look for us there. Please subscribe if you like this, and we'll see you next time.